Hello.
Hello,
What
hello,
up? Hey.
hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of Rupturing the Aesthetic. Um, I have been asked, and I'm honored to lead this discussion today. And I have here with me the great August Fanon,
Hey, what's up,
illustrious
everybody?
producer, and my comrade, my sister in arms, Khadijah, aka Future. You know what I mean? So, that's a little inside joke. So um, today we will be talking about um, one of my favorite hip hop groups over the last decade and some change, Arm and Hammer, which consists of Billy Woods and Elucid. Um, so kind of like a general rundown. We're not gonna do what we did with West Side Gun, which we can, but we're not going to go through every album. But I think each of us are going to go around, talk about a particular set of albums, um, the ones that resonate with us. And yeah, so I'll hand it over to my co-host.
Yeah, so today we're gonna go through some of the albums, just discussing like the content, the form of Arm & Hammer's lyrical style, the way that they choose beats, their content, um, the form, the shape of it. So yeah, it's gonna be really, really looking forward to today's show. I just want to give a minute. How has everyone been?
I've been good, just making it. Been very productive with the music, living my life. Everything's good.
Oh, let me turn on my light.
Huh?
My
Yeah,
light.
yeah. I mean, it's been all right. Like going through some like personal spiritual struggles right now, but I have platforms and people like y'all that help me. It really is a great honor every time I share a platform and space with y'all. And I'm also glad that it's not, um, you know, 10 degrees outside like it usually can
Oh
get
yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
So,
I'm so happy for that as well. And yeah, I just had a whole meltdown because I was trying to get the thing working and I was confused why it wasn't working. And I don't know, I was just very tired today as well. Like I took a nap and anyway, things that I'm sure nobody wants to talk about. Jamal, oh yeah, uh, I'm sorry. August Fanan, right.
it's
Not together. I'm sorry. I'm out of it today.
all good.
I couldn't
It's all
remember.
good.
Okay. So, um yeah, which album do you want to get started with? I think I want to kind of kick it off from I was listening a lot to I would say I think it's their second like EP. It's called Half Measures. I
Hmm.
was I really think that is really dope. Half Measures, Haram, um, Rome, and Paraffin are really the ones that I was really delving into. I didn't really delve into diabetic test strips as much
Hmm.
because I remember spending a lot of time with Haram. So maybe you guys, I remember a few lyrics from diabetic test strips that I think I want to talk about as far as the Maoist being glum and what that even means.
Hmm.
um, yeah, and some things like that. I kind of want to like, mm, how can I put this? Critique, I would say, from the music. But yeah, you could go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, uh, so the albums that I um, picked to kind of talk about were Rome, Paraffin, and We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. Um, so for those of you that haven't listened, the group consists of Billy Woods and Elucid, like I alluded to at the beginning. but they also, in their own respective rights, have a vast discography. Each of them, right? I think a lot of times people choose to focus on Billy Woods, but Elucid also has his own great discography. Um, I mean, uh, background on Billy Woods as well, because I believe, just to look at my notes here, um, he's been around like a lot of rappers that we've gone over. He's actually been around for a while. Um, actually,
Hmm.
first heard him with Voodoo Mega from Cannibal Ox. Voodoo Mega's solo album Mega Graffiti that was actually put out on Backwood Studios. Um, and so, Billy Woods, uh, his father was a Marxist intellectual from Zimbabwe. Mom was a literature professor from Jamaica, and you can hear that infused, that kind of literary acuteness infused in his music, in the same way that you hear it in the other people that we've gone over thus far, whether it be like Ka, or obviously somebody who we hope to do in the future like Mock. And yeah, I mean, Khadijah, I'll be interested in hearing some of your critiques as well, particularly from a Marxist lens. And just because he's not going to do it, August also produced on a few Arm& Hammer joints, particularly Rome.
Mhm.
Uh, you produced Fanon's Ghost, right, on the
Yeah.
album. Yeah. So
Oh,
oh yeah,
okay.
go
No, I said, oh, I didn't know.
ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Rome, uh, to me, modern day classic. Um, Fanon's Ghost, obviously, like I don't know if anybody who was watching, or if anybody here, I don't know if anybody ever listened to this group, Dialect, Dalek. They made an album called From the Filthy Tongues of Gods and Griots. And when I heard Fanon's Ghost, that production kind of reminded me of that era of their music. But also tracks like Carney with Makami, uh, you know, It Was Written, another joint that you produced. Uh, and yeah, Khadijah, like you alluded to, like the vast array of producers that they kind of draw from. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Outside of August, there's also, like, even on Rome alone, Messiah Music, JPEG, High Priest, Kenny Segal, who also did a couple of albums with Billy Woods, a couple of solo projects. Um, and yeah, I think I might have alluded to this in like other episodes. I kind of, not only do I believe that there needs to be, which I think that we break ground on every time that we gather together, I think that there needs to be like a different kind of conversation around hip hop, especially hip hop like this, because I hate to categorize it as conscious rap or as like art rap, but Billy Woods, you kind of have to understand how he's rapping in order to actually appreciate it. Uh, he's not gonna like give you like the Jada Kiss bar you to death, but he is gonna like
Yeah.
really, he has a really unique style, unique cadence, the way that his voice fits into pockets that he creates within the beat. I think is really really profound. But I'll turn it over to y'all.
Yeah.
Oh,
August, you want to go? Or,
oh yeah, sure. I'll talk about some of the albums I want to talk about and some of the things I want to talk about today. Um, I think I was going to give more of an overview because I'm pretty familiar with their whole catalog. So I wanted to talk about their catalog in like three different eras, from or how anyway three different eras as I see it, from Race Matters all the way up to We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. So I'm breaking down their albums in like three generalized categories that I've made up myself for reasons I'll explain later. But the first category, okay, from from we got race matters. Excuse me, race music. Excuse me, race music, furtive moments, and half measures. That's what I call like the first period. Their first period. Arm & Hammer's first period. The second period we have Rome, paraffin, and shrines. In the third period, we have from Haram forward. So we have Haram, we have the white label, we have the black label, we also have the high bias tape remix album, and we have the We Buy Diabetic test strips. The other couple things I want to talk about because we have a strong Marxist Leninist here, and I'm an all right Marxist Leninist myself, and we have a I don't want to describe you as an Afro pessimist at all, but I know you're familiar with uh, that theory. And so, since we're on Black Power Media, and we have, I think, two of the most, like we said, we don't want to call them conscious, but two of the most overt political artists that we're going to feature here. So I think I would like for you guys and maybe me a little bit to talk about how you see like Billy Woods and Elucid's like material analysis, like and then Robert, what do you see in them in terms of Afro pessimism? Are there any insights or anything you see, any connections at all? I'd be curious to hear that. Um, and the other thing I wanted to mention as we talk about another thing I want to keep in mind is the kind of ebb and flow of Billy in Elucid. Um, I know, like Robert had mentioned, that most people will jump on Billy Woods first, and Elucid doesn't get as much conversation. But to me, Elucid's just as great. But for me, I think the reason is like you said, Robert. Like Billy Woods' voice is so commanding, and his cadence is so interesting that it just grabs you. You know what I'm saying? But
Hmm.
as soon as like I swear, as soon as anytime I'm listening to Arm & Hammer and in my head I'm having this conversation about Billy versus Elucid or Elucid and Billy, and I'm like, yeah, Billy Woods is so fucking dope. And then here comes Elucid. I'm like, oh shit, Elucid is so fucking dope. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's like no, it's not a let up. There's no let up. You know what I'm saying? Um, and the other thread I want to talk about is production wise, which goes back to the kind of the reason why I broke up their albums in three kind of spaces here. Um, you know what I'm saying? But I'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's good enough for now. I talked a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was gonna say, yeah, Khadijah, you
yeah,
started off.
yeah. So from half measures, like I just want to shout out Alusa because I do think like the way he's able to deliver, like I don't know, like I think I heard someone say that they were also you can hear the kind of heavy influence of not Cannibal Ox, but what's the name of the other group? Oh my god, I'm blanking right now. When I think of it, I don't know. I can't remember at the moment. I'll get back to it. But yeah, from their production style kind of I would say is a seat like is kind of like the base, and it really kind of like highlights their lyrical ability. Even on like tracks that August did, maybe people might characterize it as maybe it can sound a bit industrial. Is that like very like
Hmm.
hard, like industrial?
I
Um,
think so. That's you can say that.
yeah, like industrial sound, but it really works well. And like half measures, I think is dope. I saw there was production from Messiah Music, Small Professor. I want to shout out Onwar High Sign, who had a dope feature on that album. Um, the whole when they were with the Wrecking Crew, but his verse was really, really, really dope. And I was like, wait, I was listening to the voice. I was like, is that Onwar? I was like, oh, what's the we're doing here. So yeah, and I was really blown away. And as far as content, so I had heard that Billy Woods is from Zimbabwe, and that there was some kind of affiliation with like Pan African movement, but I wasn't sure. Like you said that his father was a Marxist professor. I also listened to I've listened to all these albums before, but it's been a while, and I listened to History Will Absolve Me,
Yeah.
as I just wanted to get more of a contextual kind of thing. And how can I put this? I would say I'm always very cautious of how we critique revolutionary movements and their failures, because it's so easy for uh, hegemonic forces to come in and say and use this critique to level it against us, to put down our insurgents kind of rise and forces. Um, I don't know how much people know about Robert, Mugabe and things like that, but just also like just revolutionary movements in general, whether we're talking about Mao from the Cultural Revolution, there's some Mao references, there's some Stalin references. There was now this is what I was talking about earlier where I got all flustered, but there was one reference on I want to say, yeah, I think it was Haram, where Billy was like something about no, it wasn't Haram. I can't remember exactly, but he said something about like they're all you overstayed your welcome. I think this was on History Will Absolve Me, but I'm using that to kind of draw context for all the other albums. He said something along the lines of you overstay your welcome like all dictators do. And no, it wasn't Company Flow. It was some other. I'll think about it. I know exactly which one I'm talking about. And but I could hear Company Flow as well. That was a good one. And I just while Mugabe had a lot of problems, especially like later, I think contextually, like the way I would see it is that like all like African revolutionary leaders, he was encircled by Western imperialism. They wanted to destroy and get access to his natural resources and stop him from nationalizing. He did some like really like amazing things when he first went in. He had like this huge project. People were like educated, but there were also I think he's often criticized for putting down like other parties um, and jailing people. And like all revolutionary movements, they get criticized for this if we study the pattern. They get accused of being authoritarian. Why is that? You have to protect your revolution. Thomas Sankara, I think, I forget where we both heard this, August, but Thomas Sankara knew that his friend was going to kill him. He knew that. Like he knew that his friend was going to do this. And he was the only one that said, instead of going out and doing extreme repressive measures, which is completely justified, he allowed his death to happen. Mugabe fought to the very end. Now, we were both at a lecture where last Friday, shout out to December 12th movement,
Shout out
where
to December 12th.
shout out to December 12th, who also explained this to us, where people will say, I guess, that, his vanguard party or whatever was taking the reins of power and he forgot about the people. But I would say it was a constant back and forth with periods of disconnection and dislocation. And I just want to give space for these revolutionary projects because if you're up against an imperialist machine and you're a little small country with absolutely nothing going on, what are you supposed to do? But I'm not from Zimbabwe. So there's that. But I mean, I'm reading the history. Like a lot of people know about Eric Williams from Trinidad and Tobago, who wrote Slavery and Capitalism. It's a seminal text.
Hmm.
And we, even though we're not from somewhere, we can understand like the material conditions that give rise to certain things in that country. So I would just couch that, but I feel like even with the critiques that I see them both making of African leaders who have captured the revolution but let their people down, I think is the overarching kind of theme. Um, I noticed like this thread, and that, yes, the system of capitalism isn't working, and we also need to critique these revolutionary movements that said that they were for the people, but ended up with extreme blunders. So that's kind of the theme that I'm getting couched in between, like, everyday shit. I remember he said something about, um, you know, I have my wife. I'm like, fuck you, bitch. And I have my wife, and then I wake up the next morning like nothing happened. I'm like, like this is just real life. You know what I mean? This is giving us so much of his life experience, his breadth of knowledge, um, because you can critique something but still really appreciate the wide range. He talked about Mogadishu, but I mean a wide range of topics that. But I really enjoyed Haram. I really enjoyed Half Measures. Um, I really Rome is dope. So those were the ones that I focused on. I really love Alchemist production on Haram. I think that it's set nicely. Uh, and I just want to give space for Elusa because he's able to do this thing with his voice too that is very commanding in a very, what's the word that I'm looking for? Poetic way.
Yeah.
I remember he made this line where he said, um, "Big lips flailing in blackness," and I was like, that is such a beautiful imagery. That's just so beautiful. Where I think Billy is kind of able to do like this very intense delivery that is almost like scattered, almost like it's not a traditional what's the verse or something, but or like rhyme scheme, but it's delivered in such a way that it just it works on every beat and every project that they do. So that's what I have to say about that side of it. What do you guys think?
Um, I mean, it's funny 'cause we've been talking about this for a while. Me and Khadija about, and she's been bringing up Woods' critique, but this is, I guess, because we've been preparing for this episode. She's really gone through the albums and like this is the most lucid I've heard her make that critique, and I think it's a valid critique. But like you said, you're not Zimbabwean, you know what I'm saying? But and so there's that. And with that in mind, you know, I think it. I see the potential harm, like you say, Khadijah. I really do, and I've even seen some people. that I know come away talking about it, and they picked up on it too. I'm not. I mean, picked up on the fact that Woods is talking negatively about these revolutions and these leaders, and they've taken that same kind of stance. Well, I don't know if they did it because Woods said it, but or whatever. But they're in agreements, and this is a problem in the movement, you know. But at the same time, I think there has to be space for there to be a critique made, and what better person to make a critique, you know? And he says so much other shit as well, but that is just one of his. That's just one of his anchoring things that he always comes back to, you know. But what you said about Elucid is so right about his. He's got this like poetic command of language. You know, it's so beautiful. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like his verses, I just be like moving my head, just be going. Like, I'm like Elucid, like wow, Elucid's just and the content is so potent. You know, like every black reference, like he pulls from so much stuff. You know what I'm saying? You know, Woods too, but Elucid, man, he's crazy. But I guess that's all I got to say for what you just said just then. But like, yeah, oh yeah, I wanted to talk about. You said half measures, and you mentioned half measures, and like out of those, like I said, out of the way I look at their albums, I look at like I said, I look at half measures, race music, and furtive moments as like the kind of genesis of Arm and Hammer, and I think half measures might be my favorite out of that trifecta myself. It's probably like half measures, a little bit above furtive movements, and Race Matters third. But just listening to Race Matters and preparing for this, excuse me, Race Matter. I keep saying Race Matters. Preparing for this, I've been listening to race music a little bit, and I was thinking to myself, like, this doesn't sound as bad as I thought. Not that it sounds bad, but the stuff that I didn't like, the negative feelings, like I didn't feel strong about. Like, oh, this is good. I like this. I like this. This works. This works too. But as far as like what I wanted to say about them is their arc and their trifecta, like Race Matters has the most residual production taste in the sonics of like Billy Wood's previous production. But at the same time, Race Matters out of those three, I guess because like they were EPs, that was the one that caught on. You know what I'm saying? I remember it had this bright cover. They were sitting on a park bench, and it looked very spring colors. There's like these two black men, and they're just sitting on this bench. It's like it's like race music. What is this? You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. And I remember it getting a lot of like press, at least on the social media and on the internet, and that was my introduction to them actually. I was like, okay, I never heard of those guys. I never heard of them before in my life. So 2013 is when I heard of them. But like I said, and yeah, that's all I'll say. I'll continue later, but you can go ahead, Robert. Go ahead, man. You can respond back to
Yeah.
what Khadijah was saying.
Yeah. I mean, you know, so Billy Woods has a new album coming out. I believe it's called Gollywog.
Yeah.
And on the Backwood Studio description, it said that, you know, he's blending concepts from this, and this, and then the word Afro pessimism popped up. And so the first thing I want to say, and once again, I want to give a shout out to my brother Nuns for this insight. He said hip hop is, I would say, black music writ large, but hip hop in this instance is a Afro pessimistic genre. And so let me explain what I mean
Okay.
by that. I think a lot of times, particularly on the left, particularly the black left, there is this um, need to kind of forego or ignore critical insights made by Frank Wilderson because of a lot of reasons. It was a theory that he admits was formed in the academy. And, you know, as Khadijah always points out, and as I always try to point out as a person that's in the academy, there is reason to be critical of academic theories that seep into the mainstream milieu. But I think it's also important to understand that Frank Wilderson, Jared Sexton was also an activist, but Frank Wilderson was and is a revolutionary Marxist, right? He fought with the ANC in South Africa. And so when I bring that into my conversation, that is why, August, what you said is so pertinent, because it does not mean, if he was here on the show with us, he would agree with 99% of the stuff that you said, Khadijah. Um, I think where the shift happens is understanding where the failures lie, not to not have a revolutionary um, kind of program or process, but to use the analytic to look at the problem differently. So before I go forward, because I do want to talk about the music, does that make any sense? Because I was thinking about it as I was talking as I was thinking, and sometimes my words can get jumbled.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how I see that in the music, everything from, like I said, in August, I like how you broke it down into those kind of like into that triad,
Hmm.
especially in the Rome to like shrines era. You know, stuff like Fanon's Ghost, everything from the production that you laid out to just uh, like Billy Woods had a line where he was like, "Yo, I tried to show up to work late, but still arrived on time. I'm the worst." Like, just understanding of like navigating the world with this type of critical insight. I believe is important, even when there are moments that you might disagree with the content of the actual music, um, because and once again, as Frank Wilson would say in terms of like the theory, pessimism does not mean it's like with Gramsci. Um, I have a pessimism of the kind of bourgeois, progressive Italians that think that we can fight fascism with like the same tools that we've been fighting it with. But I'm optimistic about the will of the proletariat to rise up and overthrow this particular capitalistic hegemonic structure. And so I use pessimism in that way, not to just be sad all day and do nothing, but to look at the problem more critically, as Fred Moulton would say. I'm not saying don't read these people, I'm saying read them more deeper.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that Woods and Elucid, like you guys alluded to, on Haram, Elucid had this line where he was like, "We all know the Isleys before the Beatles," and because
Right, right,
basically,
right,
because
right, right.
as much as people want to fucking excuse my French, but they want to dick ride the Beatles, you know what I mean? They got their uh, cultural relevance in the United States by covering the Isley brothers. And
Right.
so this is why I think that talking about music in this way, as opposed to going like, here are the amount of triple entendres in a fucking song, like besides doing that fucking corny shit, understanding how to use these particular artists and their insight, how can we understand a material analysis? How can we understand a socio cultural how do we understand a socio cultural analysis? And I think that you know Arm and Hammer does that well. But yeah, like we can develop the conversation. Hope that any of that made sense. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
think so.
makes sense. August, do you want to respond?
No, no, I'm okay for right now. You
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
I I definitely hear you, and like I said, I think Wilderson's work is really important, and I do hear the threads of like a kind of um, sort of Afro pessimistic, um, maybe some through lines of like Pan African, like maybe Nkrumahist, maybe kind of through lines there. I don't know if they would say that, but that's what I'm hearing. And and I hear it, and they even had like on Rome, they mentioned Walter Rodney, and the state, trying to basically, kill him. Um, and they talk about that, but I don't know how can I explain this. While I understand and I really believe that there's a deep need to really hold this sort of Afro-pessimistic analytic at heart, because it's an analytic, it's not like a praxeological kind of thing, right? It's a lens through which you are able to better, view the world. And I do think in my own life, I have taken, a lot of, what Hortense Spillers talks about, Norman Najari. But where I feel like where I depart, my departure point would be like, I guess despite all of that, despite the blunders of our revolutionary movements, like, when I think about Wretched of the Earth, and what Fanon says, especially the chapter, on violence, even though he does make a critique also of the kind of authoritarianism that can seep in, it's like that visceral need to kind of keep fighting off the the sort of imperialist constraints on Black people that blots them out from, ontologically just erases them. You know what I mean? Where your own sense of self is just continuously deconstructed and you don't know what you are anymore. Um, but I don't know if this is making sense, but that's how I'm thinking of it. And I think I wish there was more Walter Rodney and less of Wilderson, because I think with Walter Rodney, there's such a material understanding of, who was a student, by the way, of not Padmore. Who am I thinking about?
You
Um,
said
CLR.
CLR.
CLR James, who was a student and friend of, studied under CLR James.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's an understanding, like, yes, we have all these problems within our movements, but at the same time, we shouldn't denounce them, because what is the other option? To remain, imprisoned,
Mm-hmm.
to just, there's this, I think I talked about it, or made a tweet about it, or I did something where I'm saying, like, we want to critique so much. I think for me, people want to critique so much the Marxist method, which is a method to be applied according to context. But the fundamental understanding of the dialectical movement and contradiction within social revolutionary movement is so lacking, is so gravely lacking. We account for everything else, but the crux of the dialectical movement, and understanding from a historical materialist lens, how revolutions come to be birthed. They're not like created from something new. They're birthed from the old society. That is the negation point. And so you're carrying all of the problems of capitalism, racism, chauvinism. You still have that. So when we have our revolutionary movements, whether we're talking about, Emile called Cabral, you know, we can't negate the fact that we have this. And I think that for me, this is all, and Walter Rodney critiqued this in Nkrumah. This sort of, I think and I meant to say this is especially, we have this very messianic thinking of the way revolutions are supposed to be. They're supposed to be Puritan, but they're supposed to be perfect. Everything is supposed to be much better now that the white people, he even said where he talked about, that song, Kill the Boer, you know, kill the Boer. And so, yeah, I just feel like we can't think of our revolution in this messianic kind of way where, it's almost like we give more leeway for capitalist imperialism and for our own movements where we have this heavy sort of vilification against them. And I think for me, that's the point where I would like to see us account for dialectical materialism in a real and in real world way and contradictions.
Um, so once again, like, and so I think that Wilderson would agree with you. He would say be more like Rodney than like him. Um, I think what I appreciate about his work, and so let me just from the standpoint of somebody that's in the academy, Joy James also got this. Shout out to Dr. Joy James. I got this understanding of how to critique this problem. The academy writ large seeks to take ideas a lot of times that are based in movements, break them down, and then divorce them from their radical or revolutionary movements or potentials and stuff like that, right? So a lot of times, even Marxism in the academy can, especially you point this out, Khadijah, a lot, in the Western bourgeois academy,
Especially Marxism.
it ends up being a kind of a kind of bourgeois literary thing as opposed to something to be applied politically, right? Like even my professor at at where I go to school, he talks about why he's teaching Marxism in English and not in history or in economics. There's that the academy seeks to do that, and that happens with every theory, right? So to go back to Wilderson, especially so if you forego like the mainstream Afro-pessimism book, if you start with Incognito, he's critiquing Nelson Mandela. He's critiquing, as Lawrence Grand Prix would say, he's critiquing Mbekiism. He's critiquing how Willie Mandela was marginalized because she wanted an actual revolutionary program to push forward. So he's not critiquing Chris Hani. He's championing Chris Hani.
Yeah.
When he writes
He
about
also
the
says some other things about that situation.
yeah, he whether it's Chris Hani or even if we bring it back to the States, he's championing people like Sekou and Sophia Bukhari, and Daruba. I think what's helpful for me is, so you're right in the sense that a lot of times, and I hear this not even in terms of like Black revolutionaries, I just hear this in terms of revolutionary thought in general, where people, it's usually an emotional argument. It's, yeah, things are bad, but what is this program gonna do to like stop imperialism? So, like essentially what they're saying is, if you don't have a perfect blueprint or architecture for how a new world's gonna look like, what is the point of fighting? And what I appreciate about Wilderson is that he says, yo, we're going to give you the analysis, but we're going to cut off right here in terms of what Black people need to do in the streets in order to change this shit, because it shouldn't come from academics. That is why whenever I go into organizing spaces, like the ones that you invite me into or other comrades, I don't come in with here's how we don't exist as selves. That's not going to drive.
Not a winner.
That's not going to drive, because Black people's material conditions need to be addressed in terms of like our housing, food justice, the whole thing. I do think that there's something, the optimism, if you want to say, within the theory is understanding that, oh, I don't have to adhere to Western hegemonic rule in terms of knowing how to tear this shit down. And that doesn't mean that you don't read Marx or Lenin or the psychoanalytic side of Afro-pessimism. Doesn't mean you don't read Lacan. Um, if anything, I see it as understanding those aspects in order to understand our revolutionary movement stronger. Now, where you're right, Khadijah, is when it gets into a certain avenue, usually people take these things and they misconstrue it and they distort it. But once again, I think that happens with every theory. And so, to wrap it back into the music, when he
Mhm.
talks, when Billy Woods is talking about like dictators overstay their welcome. Listen, we all went to school in this wretched country. We're taught about how bad communism is from when we're in grade school. But I also want to take like my one of my best friends in high school, Angelo. He was born in Hong Kong. My partner's dad, may he rest in peace. He grew up in Hong Kong. Um, and while yes, for instance, literacy rates went up um, during Mao's reign, and also women had more political power. And I'm doing a generalized because I don't want to go too much on that.
Mhm.
I cannot deny how people were also harmed by his reign because, like you said, you not being from, obviously I'm not from Zimbabwe either. I'm also not Chinese, and I don't. What I also don't want to do as a Western intellectual is say we read all this revolutionary stuff over here, and here's how people need to look at it better. No, I also need to hear in order to um, have a better connection in order to understand how revolution can actually happen and how solidarity can actually be formed. I need to listen to the people that actually were enduring those material struggles in that part of the world. Um, that is why when I use the word critique, it's not a matter of full on negating the usefulness of these theories, but it is a matter of understanding how can we think about these things differently, because we need to think about them differently. We're not going to get anywhere in terms of this show, like our cultural and aesthetic production, or our material conditions or revolution, if we don't start to think radically different. And I mean radically. As Samurai Terefe would say, we need to start thinking about a revolutionary movement worthy of a name of being a revolution. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. I know I said a lot. So
Yeah. No, I feel you. And yeah, I mean, that's what I appreciate about their music because someone pointed out that they do balance each other out and they do give you a full picture. None of us are from these countries. And so our kind of analysis of the situation is going to be different from someone who was there on the ground, per se. Um, to say, I think there was yeah, I think it was a Lucid also, that made that also said a lyric like, I'm styling on him like Stalin. You know what I mean? I'm styling. You remember that I'm styling on him like Stalin, and then I think towards the end there was something like, you know, um, dead bodies don't talk or something like that. Um, so I mean, just to like the thing I understand like when people say like Mao he the middle class people he like made them work very hard now and took away their middle classness or whatever the case may be. And I think that is more so to me like what people are so angry about. Because even during the Stalin period, we had the kulaks, who were the rich land peasants, who, this is what the bourgeois, media and scholars would say, Stalin killed all these people and things like this. But this is not true. But they also are not mentioning how brutal the kulaks were to the agrarian, the poorer peasants. And of course, what I want to drive home is we need to have a different narrative than the imperialists. We can't have
yeah,
the same narrative. We can't have the same narrative. Why is it that we have you would hear people have the same exact the Maoists? I've been arguing with the Western Maoists for 2 days, and I'm sorry, like I don't know where these people are, but um, why do you have the same narrative as New York as the State Department? Why do you have the same understanding of your revolutionary history of the State Department? And one of the things that I wanted to talk about is Patrice Lumumba. Lumumba is upheld. Sankara is upheld. Why? Because they died. They were killed before they got to the point to annoy people, essentially.
Mhm.
Had Patrice Lumumba lived, completed his project, and maybe had a full term like Mugabe, they would have fucking hated him.
Yeah.
And we all knew it was. We all knew it's true. They would have hated him. People love when you die early because that way you maintain your pureness. You maintain you're not soiled by any sort of contradiction because you never had an opportunity to create to for any contradiction to manifest itself. So
Mhm.
I would just hold that into consideration. And I think that's the crux, the it's a combination of Masonianism, um, imperialist thinking, and I want to also talk about nuance as well because people harp on nuance and nuance is really important, but it gets to a point where people are getting so granular that they're missing the kind of essence of the whole point of the thing. You know what I mean? It's almost like we're getting meticulous to the point of not even understanding what we're talking about in its essence. But to tie it back into the music, I mean, for me, that's where I think for me the sort of contention is in the music. It's like while I appreciate and I'm still learning because with Woods and them it's not just a one time show. You have to continuously listen and understand. Like even when I was listening to Aethiopes, like I still have to get through and understand. And if you don't really have like a grasp on like, when we talk about figures like Mogadishu, or when we talk about, and when he talks about like all this other history, you can kind of get lost. So it's almost like, it's for me, like when I listen to it, it's an enjoyable listen because I'm like I want to hear the rhythms and the style first, and then I catch all the lyrical stuff later. Um, but I don't know. I really still appreciate it. And I find that it makes you a stronger thinker, listening to Woods, listening to Elucid, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I agree. I think it does make you a stronger thinker to listen to both them brothers. And I wanted to mention Brother Zuma in the chat summed this up really great. We got our language got kind of high here. I like what he says here. He says here, Woods is definitely more cynical. Elucid's verses generally give a more hopeful, uplifting feeling. They balance each other out really well. The humor in their music is also important to point out. Yeah, I think so.
Billy was very funny. Yeah.
Billy and Elucid, but Billy in that delivery, he's very funny. But Elucid's got some bars too. But they're both hilarious, and I think that definitely kind of evens balances out the heaviness of their content
Mhm.
if you're really paying attention to their lyrics, if you get into their lyrics, that because and like I think it their wittiness and their high level of content and their insights really highlight the production as well. You know what I'm saying? It makes it that much more special. You know what I'm saying? Because like, you know, going back to my trifecta, looking at their albums, I think that like Billy Woods coming from his solo work had this thing where it was like the Khadijah described it as industrial, and I think that'd be a good way to describe that type of music, kind of like industrial, kind of like electronic leaning, but it was kind of pensive, kind of a nervous, maybe not nervous energy, but maybe a little anxious, and like he could deliver thoughtful things, you know what I'm saying, and uh, and then there's this kind of like brooding, kind of like more kind of like hardcore hip hop, darker type of element to it. Um, that Elusive was more rapping on like that type of stuff, and they were both very experimental. Both their production palettes were very experimental before they started working together in general. But then Race Matters comes, and it's like the reason like that like I kind of skipped over, even though that's the first one I got into, and that's the one that hooked me in. What I didn't like about it was some of the beat selections. You know what I'm saying? But even the ones I didn't like then, a lot of that I like now. But I can see my trajectory, my own growth, and I can see how like maybe Race Matters wouldn't connect with some people. But to me, like once they start cooking with this half measures and this furtive moments, and by the time we get to Rome, they're locked in sonically. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They're locked in. And what I like about Rome, Paraffin, and Shrines is the darkness of it and the
Yeah.
kind of like intensity of it. You know what I'm saying? Shrines, not so much. Shrines is kind of edging back into Race Matters a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get Haram, which Haram just goes all the way back to the kind of just floating around Race Matters type of shit, but in an alchemist type of concoction of it. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's in that alchemist kind of concoction. And then we get the
It
two
sounded more like half measures to me.
it's but it's something harking back to their old style is what I'm trying to say in a general sense. Um and then we get the white label and the black label, which are just crazy fun records. Like I meant to share those with you guys because I know I mentioned those last time we talked about. You guys didn't get to listen to them, but I'm gonna share them with you. I want you guys to check those out. Those albums are dope as fuck. I mean, they're a little. It's kind of hard to gauge those albums in terms of their discography because I feel like those albums were more put together in a different kind of way. They don't have like the narrative feel that the other albums have. You know what I'm saying? Because I think they were more like leftovers or loose tracks or stuff that didn't get cleared for samples. But they are as collections of albums. Like if you may, I hate to say mixtape because to me a Billy Wood it just sounds almost like I'm denigrating what they're doing with the albums to say
Mm-hmm.
call it a mixtape. But I just want to say, but those albums are dope. And then we get we by diabetic test strips where I feel that is their greatest attempt and completion at splitting the difference between being
Yeah.
this kind of like I said, the intense hard sound that I like and the more meditative, kind of experimental shit, you know what I'm saying, that is cool, you know what I'm saying? Like that was probably their best mixture of both those sounds. I think Rome, you could say Rome is, but Rome doesn't have anything on it that sounds like race music or some of the stuff that Billy Woods was working on with Blockhead and shit like that before. But why we buy diabetic test strips does. And that's all I want to say about them as far as what I consider. But like my favorite is Rome. Then I like Paraffin. Uh, we buy diabetic test strips, Shrines, and the other the white label, black label, half measures, and furtive moments are all kind of interchangeable. I don't know how I'm gonna rank those ones. They're all very very fucking good to me though. Great albums, you know what I'm saying? Great albums. But that's all I wanted to say right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad you brought up We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. I mean, once again, the track listing. I mean, let me bring it up, but everybody's on there from yourself, obviously, to LP and JPEG
Mm-hmm.
Mafia. I think my favorite song on that album is The Keys Under the Mat.
Who produced that?
Who produced it?
Yeah.
JPEG.
Okay. Was that
Um,
one? That was like one of the earlier songs, like 1 through 5, or was that?
that's one of the later songs.
Oh, one of the later
That's
songs.
like if not the last track, the second to last track.
Okay. Okay.
But once again, so I mean, maybe we should dedicate a show to like how we listen to music. So I have like a bit like I have a record player in my other room, but I also have like these like open back kind of headphones. I've been collecting a lot of audio equipment for years, and so the sonics that come through. I just get obsessive over like certain sounds. Um, and so there's just something about the way that Peggy like laid the drums underneath the keys on that track, and how it's mixed is just really crazy. And going to what Zuma said, Billy Woods, he said it's Princess in the P, but it's a Glock 19 under the mattress. It's like, yo, that's like the core of like all of my work. It's like, yo, like it's Princess in the P. Yeah, we have our own version, but it's a Glock 19. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and so I definitely agree. I mean, I think after furtive, because I agree with you. Race music was good. I only visited it like when I first listened. I only revisited it a couple of times. But I think from Rome on, they started to really lock in what they want to kind of sound like sonically. And I think the ones that I keep returning to are Rome, Paraffin, and We Buy Diabetic Test Strips. But yeah, Khadijah, when you brought up Haram, like it just makes me want to shout out Alchemist, because he's not just a producer that's just like picking up stuff for like work, like he's already established. But the
Hmm.
fact that like he produced for like Mob Deep and Jadakiss, and then you're producing for this underground group, and he's one of the few producers that can like have cachet in both the mainstream arena and the underground arena, and have it not seem like he's like cheating the
Reaching.
game.
Yeah, it's cheating and
So
reaching. Yeah.
shout out to Alchemist.
Shout out to Alchemist, definitely. And I mean, and I'll make another point that about the Haram album as far as Arm and Hammer and the trajectory. That caught the attention of a lot of people that were not familiar with Arm and Hammer. I mean, to this day, like most people come up to me if I mention Arm and Hammer, they're like, "Oh yeah, they did that thing with Alchemist. Oh yeah, I love the thing with Earl and Alchemist." So that got them a lot of good looks and a lot of attention. The other half of that I feel is this: like Arm and Hammer is awesome. You should lock in. You really need to lock in. In general, like they are fucking phenomenal. I'm glad you got here because of Alchemist, but you need to go back and you need to go forward with these brothers because they are fucking top notch.
Hmm.
Right, and Mahami did a fucking sick verse on it was Carnegie.
Carney's,
Carney's.
Carney's, yeah,
yeah,
Carney's. That was a really really dope verse. I think there was one with not on that album, but there was one with Rock Marciano.
That was on History Will Absolve Me.
Yes, yes, that was on History was of. I was like, oh, it was it was nice to hear Rock on bouncing back and forth with Billy Woods, talking his fly shit, but like really trying to not really contort, but really melding into that sort of vein that Billy Woods does so well. That I really thought it was good. But to talk about Haram, Curly Castro had a wicked feature on there
Hmm.
Curly Castro had a wicked feature on
on Church Avenue.
Paraffin and Rome. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was my first time hearing him was on Rome. I was like, yo, who's Curly Castro? This is like one of my favorite verses from the whole damn album. Like, I remember it like all the time. But yeah, Castro's incredible.
Yeah.
Castro, particularly, I like him. I mean, Wrecking Crew's crazy shout, Prim Rock, you know what I'm saying? But Castro,
Reckon, yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, no, it was really dope. And I remember like when it came out, like what, like 4 years ago when I first heard it when it came out. I can't
Which
remember.
one?
Haram.
Yeah, it came out 2021.
Yeah, like about like 3.5 years ago. That I remember. I still remember like Curly Castro's part. You know what I mean? Like, I just think like the people that they work with, and the way that they're able to like bounce off each other, and sonically what they're doing. Because, like you said, I do. There is a shift between like half measures and paraffin and Rome that takes place. That I think that yeah, they really begin to not only lock in, but the content also changes. It also gets like a lot more, a lot. darker. I would say a lot like grittier. Like they seem more unafraid to say certain shit. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I don't know. I feel like when you listen to Billy Woods, like he definitely helps you want to become a better writer, like in whatever genre. I'm not even talking about like hip hop necessarily, but like you can tell they have a vast array of like um, styles that they're pulling from. But yeah,
Elusive too.
yeah, I
Elusive too.
wanted to
Elusive too.
say, Lucy's new album is really really dope.
Yeah, Revelator.
Yeah, must buy Fried First.
Yeah.
Fried Fish Friday. I really, really like that song. And I was also telling August, like, I don't know if, there's a lot of like West Indian references as well because you mentioned that Billy is Jamaican. I'm not sure where Elusa is from. Does anyone know?
Hmm. No,
I
actually.
thought. I mean, all I know is he's from Red Hook, Brooklyn. I think, but I don't know what the ethnic
Uh,
background is per se. The
Yeah.
breakdown. I'm not
all the
sure.
way out there in Red Hook? Yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like heavy West Indian influences that I think are really important to pay attention to the kind of spiritual element that they're pulling from as well. Um,
Oh yeah, that's big too,
Yeah.
especially with Elucid. But
yeah,
Billy too. But Elucid, yeah.
yeah.
Elucid's like I heard somebody called Mock Homie like evil most death or
Yeah.
evil. My man Dan, shout out Dan. He called Mock Homie evil most death. But
Yeah.
like I can see Elucid in that space too. Elucid's really like evil Yasin Bey too a lot.
Yeah.
He's so I feel that. But yeah, yeah.
That's an interesting comparison. That's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, I just like in listening to them and to delving into them because I first got introduced to them. I would say about like 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember exactly what it was. It wasn't Haram. I think it was haunted hiding places
Yeah.
with Kenny Siegel is where I started to like really hear about them and I listened to that album. Of course that album is dope. Cross Space is like I think one of my favorite songs. Like I really love that transition, that beat transition on that song. I think it's really, really dope. And yeah, but I do think it's the kind of music that you have to grow into. Because when I first heard them, I was like, I like it, but I'm not sure. But I think Crawl Space really, really grabbed my attention. But I do think like what August said, like there's some songs on half measures, I'm like, oh, okay. But like I just feel like it's something that you have to kind of grow to develop, like a company flow. And even thinking like there's this group, like, can somebody help me figure it out? They were down with Das Racist. So I heard
Hmm.
Billy was it Billy Woods or I think like one of them said that they were like influenced by not Das Racist, but it
Like
was
LP.
no, not LP. It's an experimental hip hop group as well. I was just listening to their
Anti
album.
pop consorting.
Anti-Pop Consortium. That is it. Anti-Pop Consortium. And they were heavily influenced by this group. And I can definitely, if you don't know who Anti-Pop Consortium is, I definitely think you should check them out because you could definitely hear the the heavy influence. Maybe they were friends or something. I don't know. Like even like Prim Rock, right? Like those that whole kind of click, like that they do music together. You can hear like the influences with each other and things like that. And yeah, I just think it's really dope. Anti-pop consortium is really dope. It's also just something like you have to kind of grow to get into, like you know,
Yeah.
Fast Air, Cannibal Ox. You
Yeah,
know,
I think that's a good point, especially for this audience. I don't know who's listening or who might listen, but yeah, like Billy Woods and Elucid. I mean, I'm a huge fan. We're all huge fans, but they are a group that you're gonna have to spend some time with to get it. You know,
Yeah.
probably most likely. You might get it, you might not, but if you're on the fence, it's worth your time to stick with it until it clicks. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Because I mean, it clicked instantly for me, but like I know it'll probably take. Because of the beats, because the production is so experimental and left field, just in general, you'll probably have to find just that one track that to be your guide way in. You know what I'm saying? But once you're in, man. Join the club.
Yeah. And I just want to say, I wouldn't characterize them like I also hate this like conscious. I don't. It's like niggas is just like being artistic, and pointing to that. They say you got to kill the cop in your thoughts. You know what I'm saying? Kill your landlord.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like they had this line where they were talking. I think it was a Lucid who said, like something about like. Does anyone remember like the black woman like?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Man, something about like the black one's pussy and it's like something close to God or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. That was
Yeah.
the opening line. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn. Well,
Yeah.
like it was something like that, and I just feel like things they're saying it like, but it's not like in a way that is like will turn you off or something like this, but it's a more of a way that like it's really just in your face and in a way that makes you confront what they're saying instead of like maybe hiding behind production or something like this. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think to start to try to wind down. I mean, I think that for me, they clicked instantly. Um, I didn't have to like for certain things to catch on. I obviously had to listen again, but once I was Paraffin was my introduction to the group. Like I said, I heard about Billy Woods years ago, and so I
Mhm.
agree. Like you will, and also it's like yeah, like whatever conscious, unconscious. It's like yo, niggas also have tracks with like Billy Woods. You know what I'm saying? Billy Boldy James.
Right.
Yeah. He has
Um,
a track with Denmark Vesey. They have a track with Denmark Vesey.
yeah.
Hmm.
And so yeah, y'all. I mean, with that being said, thank you for joining us for this episode. As we, wind down, any other closing remarks from my co-host?
Yeah, I just want to say, if you haven't listened to Arm& and Hammer, I think that you should listen to it. If it doesn't click for you, because I remember someone actually saying that, I just can't get into Billy Wood's like rhyme pattern. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. And like I remember thinking like you don't make any sense to me.
Right. Right. Oh my
I'm
god.
thinking, what do you mean by you can't get into them? But I mean,
Blows my mind.
not able to appreciate, like just like a lot of younger, people that, listen to a lot of underground, they don't know anything about like Big Daddy Kane. They don't know anything about like X Clan. And it's like when they hear it, they're not able to appreciate it. You know what I mean? They think like because you're so locked into something else, like you don't even know the whole history of where the sound like evolved from.
Hmm.
So I don't know. What do you guys think about like death grips? Real quick before we.
I mean, I love so that some of the anti pop consortium, like that group, Dialect.
Mhm.
If you guys didn't listen, particularly two albums, Absence and From the Filthy Tongues of Gods and Griots. If anybody in this audience has listened to anything in that camp, uh, you will enjoy Arm and Hammer. But in terms of Death Grips, I mean, I think that particularly Ex Military and The Money Store, I think that those are classic albums.
Yeah, I think ex-military, and just the other day I was actually like a couple of like maybe like 2 months ago I went back to revisit some things because also I remember when I first listened to them like 4 or 5 years ago I was just like what is happening, but like this is something that I also had to grow to start to appreciate more. And as the more you listen, I also think jazz helps you evolve your understanding of like instrumentation. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, cause I be like on some like West Side Gun shit and whatever. So like, I had to like my trajectory had to like evolve. Appreciate both.
All right. With
Yeah.
that being said, once again, I'm Robert. You know, you can find me. I'm only on one social media platform, but you can find me at Scarlet in, on Instagram if you wanna, you know, DM me, talk, or whatever the case might be. I'm down. And yeah, other co-host.
Yes, my name is Khadijah. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. Don't be annoying on there. I have enough. I have enough problems on there as it is. And yeah, I just co-wrote an article that if you log on to my Twitter or Instagram, it's about like the brutal repression of the student movement and these horrible draconian measures being taken by this administration. I co-wrote it with a comrade, so give it a read with Unity Struggle Unity, the Red Clarion. August.
My last words are, well, you can find me August Fanon on Twitter. August, easy. You can just August Fanon. You can find me on Twitter, IG, Patreon, and TikTok. And you can check my Bandcamp, augustfanonbandcamp.com. And we got a last important message from the chat I want to read. Brittany Hutchinson said, "Come out to Medgar Evers Community College this Saturday, 2 p.m. to engage the community in more discussion about hip hop. I'm gonna be there. Khadijah's gonna be there. I might do a set if we get the music together. It'll be a good time. This Saturday, 2 p.m. at Medgar Evers College. If you're in the New York area, Brooklyn particularly, yeah, come on out."
Yeah, every Saturday we have these workshops. Not every Saturday, everyone is necessarily there, but it happens every Saturday with a bunch of coalitions. It's a coalitional effort, and if you're in the New York area, and particularly this Saturday, if you want to learn more, just hear more about underground hip hop and the revolutionary aspects of that, you can come out. All right, everyone.
All right.
What is everyone about to do?
I'm about to go get something to eat and relax. Watch some
Yeah,
basketball.
I'm about to relax, step outside for a second, get some air.
Yeah.
I'm about to also relax and finish up some reading and yeah, maybe watch my favorite. I love these like food shows for some reason. I don't know. Okay, take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Peace. Hmm.